All right, let's get ready for a deep dive today. We're going to be tackling a topic that I think a lot of people have some questions about, and that's addiction and recovery. And you sent over some fascinating research, especially about this thing called the transtheoretical model, TTM for short, of behavior change.
And what's really cool about the TTM is that it doesn't just apply to addiction.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's actually a model for understanding how we change any behavior. So, like if you're trying to give up smoking or adopt a healthier lifestyle, or even finally learn that new language you've been putting off, this model can help.
See, I always thought addiction was pretty straightforward. You're either addicted or you're not.
Yeah, a lot of people think that.
But this research is suggesting it's way more nuanced than that.
It really is. One of the biggest myths to bust right away is that addiction isn't just this on-off switch. It's a journey, a process, and it has distinct stages. And get this, the same stages actually apply whether you're on the road to addiction or on the road to recovery.
Okay, so let's break down these stages. Can you give me an example? Like, say, someone struggling with alcohol addiction.
Sure. So imagine like a staircase with 5 steps.
Okay.
And the first step is pre-contemplation. Now, this is where someone might not even recognize their behavior as a problem. They're just living their life, not even thinking about changing. In the case of our alcohol example, this might be someone who enjoys a few drinks regularly, but doesn't really see it as harmful.
So, like, they're in a state of blissful ignorance.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Then we climb to the second step, contemplation. And now they're starting to maybe see the downsides. Maybe they're getting more frequent hangovers, or friends are starting to comment on their drinking, but they're still not ready to take action. They're just kind of weighing those pros and cons.
So that internal debate is starting to heat up a little bit.
Exactly. And this is actually where things can get a little tricky because research has shown that just telling people drugs are bad, particularly teenagers, it can backfire.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can actually make the behavior more appealing because of that whole rebellious teenage phase. It's like a psychological quirk. So we have to meet people where they are mentally, not just lecture at them.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So what's next on this staircase?
All right, so step 3 is preparation. And here we're seeing a shift. The person is now actively planning to change. They're setting goals, gathering information, maybe even experimenting with small changes. So our drinker might start researching support groups or decide to, limit their drinking to weekends only.
Oh, so it's about building up that momentum for the big change.
You got it. Then we reach step 4, action. And this is where the rubber meets the road. They're putting their plan into action, maybe attending AA meetings, going to therapy, or committing to a period of abstinence.
I mean, this is the stage we usually associate with recovery, right? That big decisive action.
It is, but it's so important to remember that all those earlier steps were crucial to get to this point, and the journey doesn't end there. The final step, number 5, is maintenance. And this one's all about sustaining that change over the long haul, developing those coping mechanisms to avoid relapse, and building a life where the old behavior just doesn't fit anymore.
So it becomes less about willpower and more about a complete lifestyle shift.
Precisely. And here's the real eye-opener. People don't always move through these stages in a straight line. It's more like a dance, back and forth, sometimes even circling through the entire staircase multiple times.
That's so important to remember. It's not failure, it's part of the process.
Absolutely. And actually, the researchers even talk about a taxi driver who went to AA for 2 years while still drinking. But eventually something clicked, and he achieved long-term sobriety.
Wow. That's incredible. Okay, so we have these 5 stages.
Yeah.
What else do we need to know about how this model actually works?
Well, there are 2 really critical elements here, and those are decisional balance and self-efficacy. So imagine decisional balance as a seesaw. On one side, you've got the pros of the addiction, and on the other side, the cons. And in those early stages, the pros side is usually weighing heavily down, but as a person moves through the stages, that balance begins to shift.
Interesting. So what about this self-efficacy thing?
Well, think of self-efficacy as like your inner cheerleader, that voice that says, you got this. In the beginning, it's pretty quiet, but it gets louder with each success. Even if there are slip-ups, each attempt, as long as you learn from it, can strengthen that inner cheerleader.
It's like you're leveling up your resilience with each try, even if you don't win every round.
What a great way to put it. And here's another fascinating tidbit from the research. Even people deep in addiction aren't completely irrational. They actually do recognize the negative consequences, but they often downplay them.
How do they do that?
Yeah.
How do people who seem so stuck in their addiction keep those consequences from really hitting home?
Well, they become masters of mental gymnastics, twisting reality to fit their needs. They use tactics like minimization and rationalization. For example, a heavy drinker might acknowledge that they get hangovers, but they'll tell themselves it's only because they mixed drinks or didn't eat enough that day. They're minimizing the real problem.
Wow, it's like they build up these mental defenses to protect themselves from the truth.
Exactly. And what's hopeful is that by understanding these mechanisms, we can develop better ways to help. We can start to chip away at those defenses and help people see the situation more clearly.
That makes a lot of sense. This is all so insightful. So we've got the stages. We've got the seesaw of decisional balance and that inner cheerleader of self-efficacy. What else is key to understanding this whole model?
Well, the processes of change, they're kind of the engine that drives that journey through the stages. They're the actions and strategies people use to move forward.
Okay, give me some examples. What kind of processes are we talking about?
Well, think of it this way. There are kind of two types, right? There's like the think it through processes, and then there's the just do it processes.
Oh, okay.
So the think it through ones are all about thinking and feeling your way through the change.
Right.
Like consciousness raising. Becoming more aware of the negative consequences of your addiction. So maybe you start reading about the health risks or talking to people who've been affected by it.
So you're taking in new information and letting it really sink in emotionally.
Right. And you're also self-reevaluating, like examining how your addiction fits with your values and goals. Like if you want to be a good role model for your kids, does smoking really align with that? These think it through processes are especially powerful in those early stages. They help people go from not even thinking about change to actually considering it.
Okay, that makes sense. So what about these just do it processes? Those sound more kind of action oriented.
Yeah, they're about taking concrete steps to change your environment and your actions, like stimulus control. If you're trying to quit drinking, maybe you avoid going to bars for a while. It's about removing those triggers.
Oh, so you're consciously changing your surroundings to actually support the change you want to make.
Exactly. And then there's counter conditioning. It's about finding healthier ways to cope with situations that used to trigger you. So instead of reaching for that cigarette when you're stressed, maybe you go for a walk or do some deep breathing exercises.
So you're replacing the old unhealthy habit with a new, healthier one, kind of like rewiring your brain's response.
Exactly. And here's one that might surprise you. Reinforcement management. It's about rewarding yourself for positive changes. Maybe you treat yourself to a nice dinner or a new book for every week you stay sober. The research shows even small rewards can make a big difference.
That's pretty amazing. It really shows how much our brains respond to positive reinforcement. So we've got these different processes, but they're not one size fits all, are they?
You're absolutely right. What works for one person might not work for another. It's all about finding the right combination for your unique situation and what stage of change you're in.
This is where a good therapist or a counselor can really come in handy, right?
Oh, for sure.
They can help you figure out your stage, understand the processes, and create a personalized plan.
Absolutely. They can be your guide and your support throughout the journey. But, even if you're not working with a professional, just having this knowledge about the TTM can be empowering. It can help you understand your own behavior and make more informed choices.
I'm really seeing how powerful this model can be for personal change. But you mentioned earlier that addiction doesn't happen in a vacuum. What role does our environment and our life circumstances play in all of this?
That's a great question, and that's where things get even more complex. Remember that context of change we talked about earlier? Well, that's where your life situation, relationships, beliefs, even your personality traits all come into play.
So like someone with a strong support system and healthy coping mechanisms might be less likely to become addicted in the first place or more likely to recover if they do.
Precisely. And on the other hand, someone dealing with chronic stress, trauma, or mental health issues might be more vulnerable to addiction. It's like all these factors create an ecosystem that either supports or hinders the change process.
So it's not just about willpower then, it's about the whole environment you're in. And what about someone dealing with multiple addictions? How does that fit into this model?
That's where it gets really interesting. Think of someone like Patricia, the advertising salesperson from the research.
Boy.
She was juggling multiple addictions, each at a different stage. She was using alcohol to cope with stress and anxiety, and even to kind of navigate those, social and romantic situations.
So she was using alcohol as a tool, but it was clearly causing problems in other areas of her life.
Exactly. And it wasn't just alcohol. She was also struggling with workaholism, using it to kind of numb emotional pain and avoid dealing with deeper issues. It's like she was trying to manage multiple fires, each demanding her attention and energy.
It sounds incredibly overwhelming. So how do you even begin to address multiple addictions within this model?
Well, the key is to remember that progress isn't always linear. There will be setbacks, there will be slip-ups. It's not about achieving perfect abstinence all at once, but about understanding the stages of change for each behavior and addressing them individually.
So someone might be in the action stage for quitting smoking, but still in pre-contemplation about their alcohol use.
Exactly. They're on different steps of that staircase for different behaviors. And that's why it's so crucial to consider the whole picture of a person's life when trying to understand their behavior or design interventions.
This is really making me think about how individual and complex the journey of addiction and recovery really is. It's not just about willpower or making a single decision. It's about a whole process of change with so many factors involved.
You hit the nail on the head. And that's where the TTM comes in, giving us this amazing framework for understanding the nuances of addiction and recovery. But it goes beyond just personal change. Have you ever wondered how this knowledge can be applied to things like prevention programs, treatment strategies, or even policymaking?
That's a great point. It sounds like understanding this model could have huge implications for how we approach addiction as a society.
Absolutely. And that's precisely what we'll be diving into next. So it's fascinating, right, how this model that was initially created to understand individual behavior change can have such a profound impact on how we approach addiction as a society.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear more about that. Let's talk about those implications. So first up, prevention programs. How can the TTM help us create more effective strategies to prevent people from becoming addicted in the first place?
Well, the key is to tailor prevention messages to the different stages of initiation.
Okay.
Remember those stages we discussed? Pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance.
Right.
They apply here too, but now we're talking about the journey towards addiction, not away from it.
So instead of just hitting everyone with the same generic drugs are bad message,
Right.
we need to meet people where they are in their thinking about addiction.
Exactly. Someone in pre-contemplation who doesn't even see drug use as a possibility for themselves needs a different approach than someone who's already experimenting or thinking about using regularly.
Okay, I see what you mean. So how would we tailor a message for someone in, say, the contemplation stage of initiation? They're starting to think about trying drugs, but they're not fully committed.
Great question. For them, the focus should be on consciousness raising and environmental reevaluation. We need to help them truly understand the potential risks and consequences of drug use, but in a way that resonates with their individual concerns and values. Not just scare tactics, but real personalized information.
So instead of just throwing statistics at them, we might share stories of people whose lives have been negatively impacted by addiction.
Right.
Help them connect with the human side of the issue.
Exactly. The goal is to help them see that drug use isn't just this harmless experiment. It has the potential to really derail their lives. And for someone further along, maybe in that preparation stage, someone who's thinking about using more regularly, maybe even making plans to, well, a different approach is needed.
That makes sense. What kind of approach would be most effective at that stage?
At that point, it's crucial to focus on self-liberation and helping relationships. We need to empower them to make choices that align with their goals and values, help them resist peer pressure or, the allure of the drug itself.
So it's about giving them the tools and the support system to make healthier choices, like surrounding them with people who encourage them to stay drug-free.
Exactly. Strong social connections and positive role models can be game changers here. And helping them develop healthy coping mechanisms is crucial. Whether it's dealing with stress, anxiety, or other issues that might be driving their desire to use drugs, we need to give them alternatives.
It sounds like prevention isn't just about information. It's about creating an entire environment that encourages healthy choices, almost like building a safety net.
You nailed it. It's about building resilience, boosting self-esteem, and equipping people with the skills and resources they need to navigate those tricky transitions in life.
This is all fantastic information for prevention programs. But what about treatment? How does the TTM change the way we approach helping people who are already struggling with addiction?
One of the most significant contributions of the TTM is this idea of stage-matched interventions. So the treatment should be tailored to the individual stage of change. Someone in pre-contemplation who doesn't even see their addiction as a problem needs a different approach than someone actively trying to quit.
So for someone in pre-contemplation, it's less about pushing them to change and more about gently nudging them towards recognizing there might be a problem.
Precisely. Motivational interviewing is a great technique for this stage. It's all about guiding them to explore the downsides of their behavior and the potential benefits of change. It's about planting seeds of doubt, getting them to question their own, I don't have a problem stance.
And for someone in contemplation who's going back and forth, weighing the pros and cons, how do we help them tip the scales towards recovery?
Well, we can help them shift that decisional balance in favor of recovery. Maybe we explore their values, help them identify their goals, and show them how addiction is blocking them from what they truly want in life.
It's like combining therapy with life coaching, helping them envision a brighter future, and then demonstrating how recovery is the key to unlocking that vision.
That's a great way to put it. And for those further along in those preparation or action stages, those who are ready to make those changes, we provide concrete strategies and tools. This might involve cognitive behavioral therapy to help them identify and challenge those unhealthy thought patterns, or contingency management, which uses positive reinforcement to reward those positive behaviors.
It sounds like the TTM approach to treatment is incredibly personalized. It recognizes that everyone's recovery journey is unique, and there's no magic bullet that works for everyone.
Absolutely. It's all about meeting people where they are and providing the support that's right for them at that specific moment.
Okay, so we've covered prevention and treatment. But what about policy? How can the TTM inform the way we address addiction as a society? Does it have implications there?
It absolutely does. The TTM challenges us to move beyond these simplistic policies that often miss the mark. Think about those just say no campaigns or zero tolerance policies. They sound good on the surface, but they fail to consider the complex reality of addiction.
They're not really taking those stages of change or the individual's context into account, are they?
Exactly. A more effective approach would be to use the TTM to design policies that are sensitive to those factors. Instead of just criminalizing drug use, we could create programs that offer alternative pathways for people in different stages of addiction.
So what might that look like in practice? Can you give me a concrete example?
Sure. Imagine someone in the early stages of drug use. Instead of throwing them in jail, perhaps a diversion program that focuses on education, harm reduction, and motivational interviewing would be more effective. And for someone further down the line, maybe a treatment program that addresses their individual needs and provides ongoing support would be a better option than just punishing them.
This brings up a really important question. Are we, as a society, ready to embrace this more nuanced and compassionate approach to addiction? Are we willing to move past the stigma and see it as a health issue that requires understanding and support?
That's the million-dollar question. The TTM challenges us to move beyond judgment, to see addiction not as a moral failing, but as a complex health issue that demands a multifaceted response.
It's about shifting our perspective from punish the addict to help the person struggling with addiction.
Precisely. And that shift requires not just policy changes, but a complete transformation in our cultural attitudes and beliefs about addiction. It's about creating a society where people feel safe to ask for help, to open up about their struggles without fear of judgment, and to believe that recovery, no matter how many twists and turns there are, is truly possible.
That's a powerful vision. And it makes me wonder, where does relapse fit into all of this? We've talked about the stages and processes of change, but relapse is often a part of the recovery journey. How can this model help us understand and navigate those setbacks?
You know, relapse is a really important part of the recovery journey, but it's often so misunderstood. The TTM actually gives us a framework to see it not as this total failure, but like a potential turning point.
I mean, that's such a different way of looking at it. I feel like we often view relapse as this catastrophic event, like the person is right back to square one.
Yeah. And that's exactly the kind of thinking that the TTM really challenges. You know, it reframes relapse as part of that cyclical nature of change. Remember how we talked about people rarely moving through those stages in a straight line?
Yeah.
Well, there are often detours, bumps in the road, even moments of going backward.
So someone could be in the maintenance stage, doing all the right things, and still have a slip up.
Absolutely. And that's where this thing called the abstinence violation effect can come in. It's this all or nothing thinking that can really sabotage recovery. Someone has a drink after months of sobriety and they think, well, I've ruined everything. Might as well just go all out.
It's like taking one bite of that forbidden cookie and ending up eating the whole bag.
That's a great analogy. But the TTM helps us understand that one slip-up doesn't have to derail the entire journey. It's a chance to learn, to reevaluate, and to strengthen those coping mechanisms.
So how do we help people see relapse as a learning opportunity? instead of this complete defeat.
Well, one important strategy is emphasizing self-monitoring and early intervention. So if someone starts noticing those warning signs, maybe they're feeling more stressed, isolating themselves, or having more cravings, they need to reach out for support and take action to prevent a full-blown relapse.
So it's about recognizing those red flags and dealing with them before they become a bigger issue.
Exactly. And that's where those just do it processes of change can be so helpful. Things like stimulus control, counter conditioning, and reinforcement management can all play a role in preventing relapse.
It's like building this toolbox full of strategies to help navigate those really difficult moments.
That's a great way to think about it. The more times you go through that cycle, even if there are relapses along the way, the more tools you add to your toolbox and the stronger those coping mechanisms become.
So it's not just about staying abstinent then. It's about building the skills and resilience to face life's challenges without falling back on those old addictive behaviors.
Exactly. And that's where that context of change we talked about comes back into play, addressing those underlying issues. Stress, trauma, mental health, unhealthy relationships, all of that can be so crucial to long-term recovery.
It sounds like it's really about this holistic approach, treating the whole person, not just the addiction.
Precisely. And that's why the TTM can be such a powerful tool, both for individuals in recovery and for the professionals who support them. It gives us this framework for understanding how complex addiction really is, the cyclical nature of change and the importance of meeting people right where they are in their journey.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. We've learned so much about the transtheoretical model and how it applies to addiction and recovery. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about the need for a shift in how we view addiction as a society. How do we move past the stigma and judgment and create a more compassionate and supportive environment for people in recovery?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I think it requires us to tackle it from multiple angles. We need to educate ourselves and others about the science of addiction, to see that it's not this moral failing, but a complex health issue. We need to share our stories and listen to the experiences of those who've been affected by addiction, to build empathy and understanding. And we need to advocate for policies and programs that support recovery, not punish addiction.
It's about recognizing the humanity in everyone, especially those struggling with addiction, and treating them with the same dignity and respect we would anyone facing a health challenge.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture where people feel safe to ask for help, to share their struggles, and to believe that recovery is possible.
This has been such a powerful and insightful conversation. I feel like we've gained a much deeper understanding of addiction and recovery, but also a renewed sense of hope and possibility.
And that's really what these deep dives are all about. We want to leave you feeling not just informed, but inspired and empowered to engage with these complex issues in a meaningful way.
Well said. So for all you deep divers out there, we'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. Knowing what we now know about these stages of change, where do you think you fit on the spectrum? For any behavior you'd like to change, it doesn't have to be addiction. It could be your fitness, your diet, your finances, anything. Just take a moment to reflect on your own journey. Identify those processes of change that resonate with you. And remember, no matter what stage you're in, change is always possible. With the right knowledge, tools, and support. Until next time, keep diving deep.